Welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast, the must-listen-to podcast for students of counselling and psychotherapy. Here are your hosts, Rory Lees-Oakes and Ken Kelly.
Hello and welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast with me, Rory Lees-Oakes, and with me, as always, a man who walks with me in the phenomenological field, Mr. Ken Kelly. How are you doing, Ken?
I'm literally skipping through the phenomenological field today, Rory. I'm so excited. I'm really, really happy. We've just kind of tipped over the 500,000 downloads on Counselling Tutor Podcast. I'm just so grateful to all of you that listen to this. That's over 500,000 downloads. That's a lot. And that's over just 90 episodes. Wowzers. I know we're on 91 now, but I was looking at it before we made this. Yes, and you know, it is you, the listener, who make this podcast, because the things we talk about are your suggestions, and we get those suggestions from our Facebook page. So if you are new to the Counselling Tutor Podcast, search Facebook for Counselling Tutor. You're going to find two pages. The first page is our closed group, which has over 20,000 like-minded people in. Knock on the door, we'll let you in and join a whole group of people talking about the world of counselling and psychotherapy. And the other is our business page. So if you go onto our business page, why not give us a 5-star review if you like our dulcet tones and the content we produce? That would be absolutely delightful, wouldn't it, Ken? Indeed it would. Episode 91, Counselling Tutor Podcast. You suggested the following topics from your conversations on the Facebook group and page. The first thing we're going to kick off with is struggling with fellow students on a course. We're still in the early days of the new academic year in the UK. It's new groups coming together. It is topical, and sometimes personalities can clash. Going into practice matters today with Rory. We're going to be looking at phones in the counselling room. Oh, I'm excited for that one. And then closing off today, sharing your accomplishments and qualifications. How do you do that? Should you do that? Do you do that with your clients? So we're going to be kind of kicking those different kinds of ideas around. But starting off, episode 91, struggling with fellow students on the course. Rory.
Yeah, well, one of the big wake-up calls I had when I started training is and it was 15 years ago, I naively thought that everybody on a counselling course were like-minded people. And to some extent they were, but there's massive variations. Some people had really radical different political views, views on all sorts. And it was a case of just realising that the group of people I was with were a section of society with all the views and all their opinions brought into the room. And sometimes, you know, people's heads can bump. And as a tutor, I've seen that quite often, where people come into joining a group, start a course, and they don't get on with someone, or they feel that, you know, someone, it doesn't like them. And I always used to encourage people to think of two things. One is the T word, hello, transference, my old friend. You know, does that... I've not mentioned transference for a bit, have I?
Not this episode, no.
Not this episode.
Well, it's a new record. We've done a whole minute and a half before the word was mentioned, Rory.
Well, I know, I can't help myself. The thing with transference is that we can be reminded of people from our past or events from our past, and they can be channeled through new people that we've never met before. So I always ask people, do they remind you of anybody or anybody from your past? I also used to say, is there any part of that person that reminds you of yourself? Because there's Carl Gustav Jung did this shadow self, and one of the exercises we used to do in class was to ask people to write down the kind of things they didn't like about others, not naming anybody, but generally the kind of things that irritated them in other people. And then get them to go away and have a think of those parts of things in themselves. And it was amazing how many people said, do you know, actually, thinking about it, now I've written them down, those are the kind of things I do.
Yeah. Oh, very much so.
Yes,
and go ahead, Rory.
Yeah, so a bit of introspection. If you feel that you're in a group and there's someone you don't like or you're not getting on with, a bit of introspection first, I think. Go to those two ideas first. And after that, if it's still not, you're still not gelling with someone, maybe just sit down with have a cup of tea. I think that's always a good solution, and just kind of talk it out. I think that's probably the best way of doing it, because sometimes people can just get themselves in a right muddle. Someone looks at me in a certain way, and I feel like this, and then they feel like that. Sometimes it's just miscommunication.
Definitely. One of the things I recognize with the coming together of a group, any kind of group, is that you bring yourself, you bring your self-concept, you bring the way that you perceive the world, you bring the truths that you hold dear and cling on to. And part of counselling training is about looking at self, challenging the truths that we hold. And maybe they change, maybe they bend, maybe they buckle as we go through our training, and you may find yourself moving and becoming in a different place, as clients do when they come in a place of rigidity and they move through the process, hopefully to a place of being a more fluid person. And Rory, I've been in a number of different groups myself over the years of my life. I've been on committees. I was a member of the Magic Circle, Rory, in South Africa, where magicians would come together. I've been in clubs. And one of the things I notice is when you gather a group of people together, it is likely that you're going to find some level of conflict somewhere in the group. It's natural within groups. You see it in television programs where they take groups of people and put them together. You're going to get people who get on and people who don't. And I think that this is a good thing in counselling training. I think we can learn more from the people we struggle with than the people we get along with. If you get along with someone, then no problem. Everything is hunky-dory. But if you're not gelling with something's coming up for you, then it's a great opportunity to challenge what that is. Rory, you said sit down with a cup of tea. And I truly believe that is a great way to work through that. And it requires just one tiny little thing that we're called on as counsellors to exercise, and that is the courage muscle. Have the courage to go to that person, the congruence to sit down and say, I don't know what it is, but this is what comes up for me, within me. Own the stuff, not you make me feel, because then you're giving them the power. This is what comes up within me, and I wonder what that's about. And have a chat with them, and you never know where that chat may take you.
Absolutely. And it's a famous quote by Maya Angelou, isn't it? Without courage, you cannot practice any other virtue with consistency. And one of the things that really opened my eyes was that sometimes you really don't know what's going on beneath the surface. We're all little icebergs in the class. I don't mean we're cold, but there's more of us that's submerged that people don't know about. And as a tutor, I've seen some conflicts, and I've known the backstory. Somebody's going through a really difficult time. They don't want to share it to the group. It's nothing about the group. It's just that they're feeling pretty horrible about stuff that's come up. And sometimes you've just got to think other people's lives. I wonder what's going on for them. Maybe if someone's having a bit of an off day, maybe just use those core conditions, or the facilitative conditions, as I like to call them, of unconditional positive regard. They just think, well, maybe they're just having a bit of an off day.
Yeah, I like that. And when you do find that kind of big clash, I like what you're saying, Rory, of the going to those facilitative conditions. And you speak about unconditional positive regard. Again, we're called on that. We're called on to take that into our counselling room with our clients. And along with that, which fits perfectly, is the empathy. And the empathy is that understanding of that they are somebody different. They have different views to you. They have a different life story to you. And they are acting as a result of the path that they have walked. I think it's also a great opportunity to examine within self what happens when that personality type is a client and walks in and sits down in the chair opposite you. And this is why we have counselling training, so that we can face these things in the training room in a simulated safe environment with a tutor and the support of the rest of the group. Because when you're there in that counselling room with your client, then it's pretty real, man, when those feelings are coming up for you. They can come up, of course, and that's something great to take into supervision, but it's really a great opportunity to work through who you are, what presses your buttons, what irritates you about other people, and then why. Because it's not them, it's you. That's the harsh truth here. It's not them making you feel that way, it's you.
Absolutely. It's a very famous quote, isn't it, by the wife of American President Eleanor Roosevelt, who says, people don't make you feel anything. You make yourself feel it. And it's true. And also, there's a bit of a theory that I'm just going to throw in the mix of Bruce Tuckman. And Bruce Tuckman did a theory on group development, and it was called storming, forming, norming, performing, and reforming. It's not bad off the top of my head.
Wowzers. I'm impressed.
Where does it all come from? Who knows? And one of the things in groups is there's always a tension at the beginning in groups. It's just what I've taught lots of groups. I've been part of lots of groups, and I think a good facilitator at the front understands that right at the beginning there is a tension until the group starts to bond and form and perform. And there's lots of different models of group development. So if you are listening to this and you're right at the beginning of your studies and the group is a little bit all over the place, just have a look up at Bruce Tuckman's model of group development, and sometimes it really does fit, and just stick with it. And the other thing, an existential position, is there are some people you're never going to get on with. Yeah. That's it.
And that's okay. Sometimes that is okay. And I guess if I had any tips on this or techniques that you could use, mine are the scary ones. Mine are about facing stuff. So if there's somebody that you feel that you may be struggling with, go and sit next to them in your next session. Choose to work with them in a group. Choose to work with them in a skills session, because it's you that can grow through this by pushing your comfort levels, putting yourself in the place where you don't feel all nice and warm and fuzzy. Put yourself in the spiky areas. Why not? There's a lot more to be learnt there. And as I said, you never know how this might turn out. I look back at my own training days. I look to the people at the beginning of my course that I didn't feel that I get along with. And some of them I'm still in contact with today. We still touch base today, and I consider them my friends today. Why? Because they changed? No, because I changed. I am in a different place. That's what it's all about for me.
Yeah, absolutely, Ken. And it's interesting that some of the people I had the most difficulty with, generally in life, I have to say, not just in my training, are those people who I'm closest to. And I think there's part of that, from my frame of reference anyway, is having to put the work in. I think that comfortable relationships can sometimes not really be very fruitful. I think sometimes a bit of challenge and a bit of knockabout, if you like. I'm not talking literally. I'm not talking about rolling around the
No.
Don't do that. No. Don't be that person. But a little bit of frank exchange of views can sometimes actually kind of form very, very good and long-lasting relationships.
Yeah, great topic, and one that comes up again and again. And thank you to those people that brought this up in the Facebook group. As Rory said, if you want to join the Facebook group, join the conversation, go to Facebook and put in Counselling Tutor. We're right there at the top. And it just brings up for me that counselling training, becoming a counsellor, and even being a counsellor once you have qualified, is more than just knowing the theory and knowing what the skills are. It is so much about self-development and pushing your limits as a person. Great topic. And another great topic that we're going to cover in Practice Matters. We bring Practice Matters on a weekly basis in this series of podcasts. And Practice Matters is where we look at what really matters and what happens in the therapy room when you are in practice or in placement. And today you've chosen phones in the counselling room. I almost want to put in a dan 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 here. Give us a taster.
Dun, dun, dun. Oh, ring ring ring.
ring. That was my yeah.
Or whatever. Phones don't ring now anyway, do they? They usually make some kind of anything but a ring. And I'm really grateful to my friend and PhD researcher Catherine Nibbs, who is doing some absolutely groundbreaking research on the use of electronic devices in the therapy room. And I'm going to be coming at it from the perception of, is your client bringing their abuser into the therapy room? Because if they are connected by a mobile phone, someone brings a mobile phone in, they're bringing literally the whole world in with them, because if they're connected to the internet and the phone system. And I'm going to be talking about thinking about, we talk a lot about mobile recording devices in the therapy room if we're recording clients. What's not talked about a lot is the power that can come into a therapy room with someone who's on has a mobile phone, where there's been kind of abusive messages, or maybe someone sent a picture to someone that's been sent on the internet. So I'm going to be talking about that and thinking about where our clients may be with that.
Important topic, and we're going to join Rory with Practice Matters after this very short message.
Take the stress out of your counselling studies and get the support of Rory and I by joining us in the Counselling Study Resource. See how Counselling Study Resource can help you. Visit counsellingtutor.com. That's counsellingtutor.com.
Phones in the counselling room. I first covered this topic in podcast episode 54 when I spoke about sensitivity when working with clients whose phone usage or consistent checking may interrupt the process and flow of therapy. Today, I'm going to be talking about the more sinister side of that lovely polished glass and metal device we all seem to carry around in our back pockets nowadays. Before the digital dawn, reproducing an image taken with a film or a movie camera was time-consuming, expensive, and almost impossible to share to any great extent. In 2015, when Madonna fell off the stage while performing at the Brit Awards, within seconds, photoshopped images were being transmitted around the world on social media, a term known as going viral. In those few seconds, she had lost control of her carefully constructed image forever. Once an image or a video goes online, you no longer have control of it. This, for some clients, is reality, as abusers threaten to share intimate images online. It's a crime known as revenge porn. Recently, I caught up with an old school friend who was going through a messy divorce. Her former partner had threatened to send intimate pictures of her to her aged parents. She called the police, who advised her to try to talk him out of it, because if they got involved, he might just hit the send button. Her mobile phone had literally become a gun held to her head. Every ring, every text felt like opening the door to her abuser. And in 2018, the BBC reported that between July and December of 2017, 225 complaints were reported to the police. And I expect that's just the tip of the iceberg. PhD researcher Catherine Nibbs coined the phrase cyber trauma, in which she described a theoretical framework that covers trauma that occurs through, with, or from the medium of the online world, cyberspace. This trauma can be immediate, delayed, or retrospective. Trauma is both an event and a process. So how may this phenomenon present itself in the therapy room? Well, clients may be hypersensitive, that those close to them may see intimate images of them online. The threat of posting images may be used to blackmail a client into staying into a relationship or engage in an unwanted sexual encounter. And this is a very great reality for those of us who counsel children. It's not unusual for abusers to go online, find a child, friend them, ask them to send an intimate image, and then go on to ask them for a sexual relationship or other form of sexual encounter. And in fact, this can happen not only online, but also in the street. There's been reports of people befriending children, then getting them to send intimate images, and then threatening them that if they don't comply with having a sexual relationship with themselves and sometimes others, that those images will be sent on. Clients may feel they've lost control. I mean, after all, if some images are out on the internet, that sense of loss of control and not being able to get them back must be tremendous. And also, clients may have feelings of shame, guilt, or embarrassment about the images or their content. It's also worth remembering that a phone can connect a client to an abuser many years after they have separated, by the recurring knowledge that images or content may be posted on the internet forever. This knowledge can be and exasperate a client's trauma or even re-traumatise. In cases like this, it may be useful for the therapist to understand that the phone is a manifestation of the abuser who is in the room with you. If this is the case, acknowledge it and talk with your clients about it. Sometimes the act of turning the phone off or leaving it outside the therapy room can be incredibly empowering for clients.
Thank you as always, Rory. Such an important topic, and I guess a topic of the here and now of our age. This is probably not something that we would have discussed only 10 years ago, and I guess that's what we do at Counselling Tutors. We look at what's happening right now, and of course Rory always makes one of his super duper handouts. If you've got one of Rory's handouts, you're going to know why we call them super duper. They really are well researched and very, very useful, and you can get Rory's super duper handout on electronic devices in the Counselling Room by going to the show notes page of today's episode, and to find that you go to counsellingtutor.com. 2 L's in counselling. We're based in the UK. counsellingtutor.com. Click on the podcast tab. It's right at the top of the page on the menu. Click podcast. It's going to show you all of our past podcasts. Today's episode is episode 91. Click on episode 91. All of the notes from today's podcast are there. What Rory and I discussed, so you've got a nice précis of that. Any links mentioned or links that we think of after the podcast when we're kind of reconsidering what may be useful as additional reading for you. And right within those show notes, you can download Rory's super duper handout by just putting in your name and your email address. We will send that right to you. And of course, if you are already a member of the Counselling Study Resource, which is our paid for part of Counselling Tutor, where we support students of counselling and psychotherapy, and of course some qualified therapists and tutors as well with their CPD, but you can actually get that handout's already been added to your handouts vault. So moving away from electronic devices and maybe going to something more tangible, something you can hold in your hand and show people, old time electronic media. Paper, I think it's called. Or do you have paper? This is about sharing your accomplishments and your qualifications, Rory.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing greater, I don't think, than the letterbox. It used to be, it's not usually letterbox now, but, the click of the letterbox, in late August, and you get this brown envelope and you open it up and there is your qualification. Everything you've worked for is kind of encapsulated on one A4 piece of paper with your name on it, the awarding body or the university, and the name of your qualification. And what do you do with that? I mean, I'm interested, do people want to share their qualifications? I know a lot of people put their qualifications on the Facebook page, but it goes a lot further than that, doesn't it? Through the years after we qualify, and in fact, during the time that we're learning, we may be doing continual professional development, looking at areas of interest. I know a lot of people go into the Counselling Study Resource, watch my lectures, and download a CPD certificate because it shows anybody who you're going for a job for, or maybe clients may be interested in the kind of learning that you're doing. So how do you show them off? Do you put them on the wall of your therapy room? That's always an interesting debate, isn't it, Ken?
It is. I remember debating it during training. Do you put your certificate on the wall? And I think that my way of thinking, so this is only from my frame of reference here, it's definitely not right or wrong, just my frame of reference, is that there are two uses for your qualifications. The one is for your potential client or your clients, and the other one is for your potential employer or people that you may be networking with or associating yourself with. So when we look to our clients, I found it interesting. I thought that my certificate was going to be the most important thing to the clients, that they would come in and they would want to look at it and say, ooh, and touch it like I did when I received my qualification. I wanted to do that, Rory, look at it and go, ooh, I think I still do. I'm very proud of it. Yes. But it was kind of debated in my group that maybe it's a sign of power. Do you really want to have this certificate right behind you that says, I am qualified, the big qualified counsellor? Does that create a power imbalance within the room? And what I found going into private practice was that I have never been asked for my qualifications. So during my contracting, I would say to the potential person, the potential client, because I always did a first free session, I would say, a little bit about the contract, and then I'd speak about my qualifications, and I say, and I have got a little file here with all of my qualifications and certificates in, if you felt that you'd like to have a look at that. And I was never taken up, Rory, not once. They didn't care. I guess they did. I mean, they need the reassurance that they're speaking to someone that is qualified. However, if you're looking for work, or if you're associating yourself with an organization, even the BACP, they want to see evidence. And even in the BACP ethical framework now, CPD is more of a requirement. You need to evidence the additional learning you do. And not just when you qualified, even at student level, if you're looking for a placement and you're going into the placement, it can act in your favor if you show evidence of learning outside of your course, specifically in a topic that may align with if they are maybe offering grief therapy and you've done something on grief. It could just be that little what would I say, that little tick that gets you in.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the BACP, the National Counselling Society, the United Kingdom Council for Psychotherapy, UKCP, all of COSCA for our friends in Scotland, all of them now cite continual professional development as part of what's sometimes referred to as professional formation, which is where you get your base qualification and then you develop your practice around different training and expand your knowledge. You can't possibly learn all there is to know in 2 or 3 years. That's just not really feasible. So, like myself, I've just finished a few months ago a course on trauma-informed therapy. I learned loads of stuff. Fantastic. And, that's what people say about the lectures in the CSR. They come along and we've got a lecture on grief. We've got a lecture on preparing to work with trauma. I was lecturing there about brain plasticity. People go in, they watch them, they can print a CPD certificate. And Ken, you're absolutely right. If you're going to an employer, or maybe you're going to a university where, admissions are tight and it's oversubscribed, that is going to give you absolutely an edge when you go into the interview and you show, look, I've not only done this, but I'm not focused on my practice and indeed my clients, that this is what I'm doing as well. It really does showcase you as a caring and diligent, that's the word I'm going to use, the word of the day, diligent practitioner.
Like it. I like the word diligent. I'm going to adopt that. I'm going to use it at least 3 times today, Rory. Diligent. I'm going to see how I can squeeze that into conversations. Also, your CV. If you think about your curriculum vitae, your CV, putting your qualifications in and listing your CPD, again, it can make an impression. It just shows a potential employer that you are willing to undertake learning outside of the bare minimum that you would need. I just wanted to touch on one thing. Rory, you've mentioned your lectures in the CSR. So the CSR is a counselling study resource. Many of you listening to this will be members already of the counselling study resource. Many of you may be thinking, what is that? Well, it is a paid for a part of Counselling Tutor that Rory and I built. And it is absolutely massive. And it is designed to support students through their studies, but it also has a massive section which is CPD related, continuing professional development. And Rory does 2 lectures a month on the first Sunday and on the third Sunday of every month. The lectures are now hour long, and they're on a specialist topic where Rory will research and really drill down onto that topic. All of the lectures in the Counselling Study Resource carry a CPD certificate, either of 1.5 hours or 2 hours, depending on the lectures and the associated reading material. But what I wanted to mention on this is if you are a member of the Counselling Study Resource and you've listened to any of the lectures live or you've looked at any of the replays of the lectures, you want to be claiming those CPD certificates as you go along. And you can claim them anytime, but it doesn't look good if you kind of claim them all right at the end of your studies. And the reason for that is the CPD certificates carry the date that you actually claim it on. So if you've got 12 lectures that you've done and you've got 12 CPD certificates and they've all got the same date on, it's going to look a little bit fishy. But if you've got 12 lectures that you've kind of spread across a year and you've done one a month, then it's going to really show that you kind of, even if I'm sure that nobody's going to go and do 12 lectures in 1 month, but hopefully you get the picture there. You want to spread those dates out.
Absolutely. And remember, if be diligent, but don't be fishy. If you take anything away from this podcast, Be diligent, but don't be fishy. And I really do agree with Ken. If you turn up and it looks like you just printed them off one after the other, then, people may take a view on that. But if they're spread out, then it looks like you've spread your learning out. And I think that's really useful. It's been a great podcast today, Ken, hasn't it?
Indeed, it has.
We started off with struggling with fellow students and how we may look and try to work with students or peers that we don't get on with. I've talked about phones in the therapy room, bringing the whole world into the therapy room and how we may engage with clients on that. And then finally, sharing our qualifications. So until the next time, stay grounded and stay safe.
Take the stress out of your counselling studies and get the support of Rory and I by joining us in the Counselling Study Resource. Counselling Study Resource, or CSR for short, is the world's most comprehensive assignment guidance and study support resource for students just like you of counselling and psychotherapy. See how Counselling Study Resource can help you. Visit counsellingtutor.com. That's counsellingtutor.com.
Thank you for listening to the Counselling Tutor Podcast. Find the show notes for this episode on our website at www.counsellingtutor.com.